Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, Joker 2, the sequel to the absolutely smash hit R-rated record-breaking billion-dollar box office, Joker de Falou. Oh, wait, no, wait, I forget it. It's Joker Folie Deux has become Joker Folie Flop. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this thing has turned into an absolute abysmal dumpster fire for the Warner Brothers company out there. And, of course, this was essentially Todd Phillips' FU to all the fans that absolutely loved the first Joker movie and, of course, was nothing more than an abysmal, disastrous dumpster fire that completely and totally deconstructed the original movie out there. And now they are suffering the consequences of their own actions. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this movie is going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office for dear sweet Warner Brothers, who at a time right now cannot handle losing a single penny. But guess what? This is what happens when you force something into a market that you would think it would be an absolute positive hit, but when you have a guy that simply has no desire, no interest, and no heart in making a proper sequel, and you decide to hire him just because, hey, it's Todd Phillips, and by God, he's got a good pedigree, well, that blew up in your faces. Hopefully you learn a little bit of a lesson here, Zaslav. When they're asking for too much money, it means they don't want to be involved in a project, and you shouldn't force people into it. So we're going to check out this article from thatparkplace.com. Check out all of the juicy details because, as you can see, according to some wonderful analysts and some very obvious number crunching out there, this thing is going to be a disastrous dumpster fire. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share it with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Did you go see Joker Folie Deux? Did you go out there and see it? Did you give it a shot? Or were you one of the hundreds of millions of people who stayed home and decided, you know what? This looks like garbage. The whole musical aspect is not for me, and I have no desire to see it at all. Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the description down there as well. So from thatparkplace.com and our dear sweet John F. Trent, Joker Folie Deux sees massive 81% decline. Boys and girls, you almost always get a drop-off from weekend to weekend, from your opening weekend to your second weekend. If you're lucky, your drop-off's like 50, 60, maybe at the worst, a high 60%, right? You get into the 70s and 80s, and there is no way your movie is making a profit unless it was like a $20 million budget and you cracked that and broke that even in the first weekend. You get a decline like this, and you are inevitably headed for one place and one place only, and that's a giant flop. 81% is insane, boys and girls. Decline in box office grosses in second weekend. Analyst predicts massive $150 to $200 million loss. Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix, and Lady Gaga's Joker Folie Deux saw the film's second weekend at the box office plunge 81% in its box office grosses compared to its first weekend. According to the numbers, Joker 2 grossed just $7 million in its second weekend, down 81% compared to its opening weekend where it grossed $37.6 million. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, this movie, a fully fledged out from an A-list studio out there, a hundreds of million dollar, $200 million production, got beat by a B-rate horror movie, Terrifier 3, that had like a $2 million budget over the weekend. And it wasn't even close. Terrifier 3 made like $25 million over the weekend. It smashed the hell out of Joker. And guess what? It's also starring a clown. So if you like horror slasher films with a whole lot of blood and gore, I highly recommend going and seeing Terrifier 3. I've heard nothing but good things. Not only did overall revenue decline by 81%, but per theater revenue also declined by over 81%. It fell from 9,105 to its opening weekend to just 1,706 in its second weekend at the domestic box office. That is pathetic. In total, the film has grossed just $51.5 million domestically and another $113 million internationally for a global gross of $165.2 million. It hasn't even surpassed its budget globally yet, and we know the take-home from the overseas box office is way less than the domestic box office. In comparison, the first film grossed $55.8 million in its second weekend and had a gross total of $193 million domestically. The first Joker grossed more in its second weekend than Joker Folie Deux has done through 2 weekends at the domestic box office. This is a failure. Given the massive drop-off in its second weekend, box office analyst OMB Reviews, shout out to Odin, predicted this film has a good chance of not even being able to keep up with the likes of the Marvels, which was also a massive box office bomb from just the last year or two. So we're talking here about one of the worst box office performances in quite a long time, and the only thing that's currently keeping the box office afloat for that movie is the international community, and that's only going to last for so long. It's going to be the exact same way. This thing is going to stall out overseas. This is how Warner Brothers already knows this is bad, because they have already announced when this will come to streaming. It's at the end of the month. It's going to come to streaming, well, VOD services, literally within a month of it still being out there in the theaters. Even Warner Brothers knows this is a failure. For some comparison, the Marvels grossed $10 million in its second weekend and had a gross total of $64 million. To emphasize OMB Review's prediction, Joker 2 is 20% behind the Marvels at the domestic box office. In fact, the second weekend performance over 30% worse than the Marvels. To put the cherry on the top, so to speak, the Marvels only lasted 8 weeks in the domestic box office. It only grossed a total of $84.5 million domestically and $115 internationally for a global gross of less than $200 million. $199.7 million before they cut it off and stopped reporting on the numbers. Okay, boys and girls, if this does less than that, it won't even cover its budget in its gross domestic. That's how bad this is looking. OMB also predicted that the Joker 2 will not make any profit whatsoever. 81% drop-off is abysmal. The film is going to be well on its way out, I would say, by the end of next weekend. It's going to get less than $1 million a day by this week. That is something that stronger films are usually able to go about 4 or 5 or 6 weeks before actually hitting, and that's not going to be the case for this movie. Later crunched the numbers and noted that by a historical standard, the movie should gross between $236 and $330. However, he does not believe it will even achieve that and predicted it will lose between $150 to $200 million. Hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. I would say that this chance becomes a chart breaker, but in the negative direction. I think it's going to make a lot less as it continues to stay out there. Even in the best case scenario, though, of 236 to 330 million, we're still talking about losses of well over 100 million. That's using the 2.5 multiplier, which we have talked about in the past on this channel. RMB, who is a guy that still works inside of the Hollywood industry out there, says you need to really times it by 3 or 4 times because of how much the marketing budgets have exploded over the years. So based on OMB's results, this movie is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. You're talking $300 to $400 million. And this is only if it actually ends up cracking the 236 to 330 million market. If it ends up coming in under the $200 million mark, like what the Marvels did, this movie is going to cost them $300 to $400 million in losses alone based on how much money they invested in it and what the marketing will end up being. This thing is going to be absolutely abysmal. There is no way around it. This thing is going to be a flop. And guess what? This is what happens when you disrespect the fans, when you decide to go in a different direction, you decide to deconstruct the character that everybody loves, and then you turn Harley Quinn into nothing. Instead of being an actual simp, somebody who's completely and totally obsessed with the Joker, you turn her into nothing more than a star fucker. You come out there and go, it's going to be a musical, and then don't even lean into the musical aspects of it properly. You underutilize Lady Gaga, who can actually sing and do these kind of things, and instead just made it a bunch of covers that made no sense and added nothing to the story. This is what happens when you decide to not respect your audience and you decide to go in a different direction because you're going to subvert expectations. And aren't you clever, Todd Phillips? Good job, David Zaslav. You hired him because everybody told you he was the right person for the job, and he's just going to bring those seats into the box office. How'd that work out to you? Joker Fool et Deux has turned into Joker Fou de Flop, losing hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office. And guess what? At the end of the day, you get exactly what you deserve.